What a fantastic antique show this is. Venice, Florida has the largest antique show on the Gulf Coast every January, and people from all over the East Coast, the Midwest, and Canada, both dealers and collectors alike, converge on this place because there are unusual things you just won't find anywhere else, and I can't wait to take you around and show you.
Well, she has a wonderful selection of purses in this space, and we see lucite, we see alligator and ostrich skin, a lot of things from the 1950s, very wearable. This one's really fun. This is a later acrylic that looks like something probably from the 1970s or even 80s, but I love the style. This is great with the faux tortoise shell. She's got a really nice selection. I always am a big fan of these magazine purses. They started making these first in Italy because there was so much trouble with pickpocketing in the early 70s, and then it became a style all over. So this one is based on brides magazines. The idea was that if you held it this way, it would look like you were carrying a rolled up magazine rather than a purse. This one's Willardi, which is one of the more popular companies. This one has a neat confetti design to it. Lots of fun. These pieces are just so beautiful. A lot of rhinestone studded. These started being very popular in New York, and then Miami in the wintertime, they were a big hit, and so you see a lot from Florida makers as well. And they kept making them for a number of years. So again, we see one here that's more a 1970s or 80s color, but most of these are going to be 1950s, and they're just beautiful. What a great selection. Ken gets really cool stuff, and he's going to show us a horse racing game. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen one of these in years, actually.
You place your bets on the color or the finish line, which is this little French flag.
Oh, this is neat.
And when you do this, this is from 1909.
Oh, wow. So that's actually like a crank action.
1909 Paris. And we bought this at the flea market, which is as big as 11 football fields in Paris.
Oh, I'm so jealous that you've gotten to see that. I mean, that must be amazing.
We had to find a giant suitcase to fit this in because we couldn't get it on the airplane. And the last horse to pass this line,
is the winner rather than the loser. Interesting.
Colors, and each horse is numbered, so it's 1 through 8.
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I have not seen one of these operate before. In fact, I think I've only seen one ever.
In the movie Dave, when he was the fake prisoner,
Yes.
Kevin, whatever his name is, but he had one with a wooden base, which is even more expensive.
Wow.
But in the White House, but it was neat.
So the winner is that guy there.
Yeah, whatever.
Huh, that's so cool. And it's
And that's the name of it.
Jeu de course.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so cool, and how fun, and thank you for showing us. I'm always afraid to wind up something that's somebody else's because, you've got to be gentle with this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like it works perfectly. Oh, yeah, this is fun too. See, I could collect all of this stuff with all of the... Oh, supposed to. Somebody didn't get out of the garage. Let's see if it does this side. Oops. We're having a little operator error. There we go. It works about as good as all these old toys did.
This is West Germany from the 50s.
Oh, and then it actually knows to drive itself back in.
Okay, get over there. There we go.
There we go. Small adjustments needed.
Yeah.
How cool. I have a friend in New Harmony, Indiana, and she and her husband love corbels, and they buy them every time they get a chance, and I don't...
About 2 hours just getting all the loose pieces off, but I left the original paint on.
Oh, that's great. Those are really neat. Oh, this is really nice.
It's from Hiram Sibley out of Chicago. And this type of seed box,
And this is your kit that has everything so you can plant your whole garden base.
so these are original seed packets.
Then you had the little ones where for your...
Like 4-color lithography came about around the 1880s.
Yes.
And, just the way that they did things back then. And
This isn't really a tractor.
No, but it's a real 1920s man's bathing costume.
Made out of wool.
Yes.
Bring this.
Well, I always wondered why they were able to go in the ocean in January, and I thought it looked so cold. Well, then I realized they were wearing a wool suit, so they probably couldn't wait to get in. These folks have some really cool stuff. 1950s tray of boy lamp. I always have liked these when you have the lighter, and it actually has these great day glow hands on it as well. There is the cigarette lighter, and when you press this, it actually turns on. So it's a lamp and a cigarette lighter, and it actually works, and they almost never do. This is the Los Angeles potteries. We actually see a lot of things by them, and I'm starting to see people collecting them. They lasted a little longer than some of the other potteries, and so I think a lot of the ones that lasted, people don't always realize are gone now. The mushrooms definitely make that piece. $25 seems like a good price. Lots of shoes of glass, and I have to say their prices are great. $10 each. That's pretty good. There's some Fenton. There's I think this one is Boyd's. Yes, they say Boyd's. These, of course, are Fenton. Mosser Glass did this one. So I wanted to introduce these folks because they used to have a space at a mall I really liked that is closed, but they're doing the show for the first time. And do you mind introducing yourselves? Because I'll mess up. Yeah, hello. Bill, very nice. Well, it's so good to see you folks here. And tell me a little bit about some of the stuff that you carry. Is this kind of typical of what you like to buy and sell?
It is. We like to keep a variety of items to attract all shoppers.
Yeah.
We like primitives and a lot of other things too.
Yeah, you have some really, really fun stuff here. Tell me a little about this piece. I saw you demonstrating this yesterday to some customers, and this is really fascinating.
This is made by Dalt in England.
Oh, nice.
Toilet Aquarius. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. It would have sat in a little stand. There was one-handed operation. This would have held water. And the lady of the Victorian era would have tilted it using one hand, poured water into the basin, and I washed up for...
And that was your wash stand. This is the piece that I have never seen before. That is so interesting to me. Patent toilet, yes, and there's Aquarius and the Dalton Burslem mark. This is before they were Royal Dalton, so this is a 19th century piece.
Yes, I would say late 19th century.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Very clearly marked as well.
Now, why did they use this instead of a washstand pitcher? Was there some particular reason? It's a neat look.
I would just say maybe higher end.
They've got a lot of World War I era. You see Springfield and Remington and Rock Island, various armories and companies that made. And then over here we have the European. Oh, this is interesting. Swedish. I don't think so much of the Swedes because they generally proclaim neutrality, but I guess that you have to have weapons to stay neutral. Hi, Rick. Good, nice to see you. Oh, very interesting. And yes, Crimson Auctioneers. Where does your...
It's out of Port Charlotte.
Port Charlotte. Okay, very good. And do you do mainly online now, or do you do real world auctions as well?
Since the pandemic, a lot of it's gone, primarily or about 80% live, 5% online.
It's kind of mostly online and then a little bit of live stuff. I really like this piece, though. You said it's 19th century from Germany, and this is coin silver, 800. And look at the beautiful slate. Look at all the detail in that. The reins, the antlers, everything. It's just amazing to see that much work in miniature. Double wear in every pair of Samson crotch shorts. Well, Delilah knew how to take care of that, but we'll just leave that as it is. This is signed by most of the members of the Los Angeles Kings, and I'm suspecting that this might be when Wayne Gretzky was playing for them. But let's see, yes. Hall of Famers including Luc Robitaille, Wayne Gretzky, Larry Robinson. Yeah, this is a pretty neat piece, and it has the JSA authentication. It does seem like people who buy this sort of thing really will pay more if it's authenticated, even if we know where it came from. They want that information. And they've got some neat cast iron, too. I see several Griswold pieces. This one with the Erie mark. Notice the different marks over time. There are smaller marks, which I believe are a little bit later in time. There's the italicized mark. Different marks can make different values on these things. So if you find a collection of cast iron or you're collecting cast iron, that's something worth doing a little more research in. This is the Handy Dan corn stick, and this one has a handle. Most corn stick pans did not, so that's a little more unusual. And then they have a really neat piece here from Evansville, Indiana, which is right up the road from where I am in Kentucky, by Brinkmather and Company. And this one's got an 1868 patent date. and only $99, and it's in great shape. I've got to say, I think their prices are really rather good for the kinds of things that they are selling. And that's nice to see. And then a nice little antique travel lap desk here, only $75. This is from right before the turn of the 20th century. You would take this with you on the train or in a carriage, and you could work away. And my friends here from Kentucky are back, and they have some things that I haven't seen. I really like this little piece. I don't know anything about it, but it is Danish again. There's so many interesting Danish potteries. I had a viewer from Norway say, "Oh, I wish we could bring you a box full of these. We see these in our area a lot more than you do." And I'm sure they do, because I showed the Horth pottery with the squirrel the last time. This fish is just wonderful. $55 on that. And this gal here, I believe, is going to have the mark of Rookwood. And yes, there it is. Very nice flower frog at $140. This is the Boy Hook Company, and this would have been a store display. I haven't seen this piece before. It looks like it's from about 1890. Boy Needle Company was out of Chicago. And it says, better than the best hook you ever used, and they have the various ones depending on the size that you need. That's really neat, and it's got the stuff in it. Well, they have some nice jewelry here, and one piece I really am enjoying is this piece. It does look like it's some sort of a molded plastic, but this is Art Deco. And what a great design, and the colors, that coral and black together, are just really fantastic, I think. I like what they've done with this buggy seat. The old newspapers kind of give it a little bit of an extra look. These are hard to find. These are from Germany, and these are signs warning people about in the triangular poison gas, and the right one is electric fence. And you know, you're not supposed to do things around the electric fence. These are caltrops. These are an interesting defensive weapon that it says the Vikings came up with originally, and these were being used around the American Revolutionary War and into the Civil War. And they're these sort of diamond-shaped pieces with points, and basically you would throw them out so that the horses behind you would get them in their hooves and slow down. Fun weather vane with the racket player on top of the pedestal that looks a lot like the Eiffel Tower. That looks like it'd be from about 1900. They have some really wonderful things here. I don't even really know where to start. There's stuff I've never seen before. The leather fire bucket is fun. We run into these once in a while, and they were leather clad because they could seal them in a way that they wouldn't leak. But you have old presses. They're very popular. I just sold my old cast iron press for $165 at my store in Kentucky. This is the 46 Star flag, and this represented Oklahoma's inclusion in the Union in 1907. Then in 1912, we have Arizona and New Mexico come in, and that was when the lower 48 became officially the lower 48. This dealer has some really neat stuff. I got to meet him yesterday, and when he comes in, we'll have to talk to him about some of his items that I can't identify for you, and we'll all learn together. But this is an old Hammond multiplex. Notice the typewriter doesn't really have a frame like they did in later times. That would have been a money-saving device and made it cheaper for shipping when you're doing all of this by rail. I heard these playing when we were doing our setup, and aren't they amazing? A whole bunch of talking machines. I love the Victor here, and the Columbia gramophone with the big wooden bells, as opposed to the metal. These tabletop models are definitely becoming more popular with collectors. This one's priced at $3,500. It's the number 4 with the original mahogany horn, which you just never really see. And apparently everything is original. And that makes a big difference with these beautiful, beautiful pieces. This gentleman is out of Naples, Florida. It's Bradford's Antiques, and wow, does he have some really beautiful things. Beautiful slag glass lamps. These are unusual. The first one in front here is Chicago Mosaic Company, and Mosaic Shade because they're doing all of the tiling with glass. The grippins on the bottom are just really beautiful, and the head cap is quite ornate, and that makes a big difference with these. This one is really neat because of all the shaping. This is unusual, where there's arched panels and then this division between with different colored glass. That is just beautiful. And this one apparently is the Northwest Cut Shade Company out of Chicago. This dealer is very knowledgeable. I did not know some of these companies. And this is just fantastically beautiful and not inexpensive. It's priced at $5,500, but I've never seen one like it. This is a fun booth with some really neat small items in it. I'm such a sucker for these. These are bottle caps made of porcelain for pouring out of their noses, which I think is kind of funny. These are made in Germany. They've got $14 each on them, which is rather inexpensive price. These fat little keys here go to railroad blocks, and so people who are collecting railroads will look for their railroad on it because the initials of the railroad are stamped on them, but they also look for them to see if they can match a lock that they've already got, because that makes the lock considerably more valuable. I sold the big 21-inch Blanco fish yesterday. This is the smaller companion, the same era as the one I sold with the 1980s square label. But this one, the fins are turned down, so it's a little different style. Good to know, because a lot of people would think that they all should look the same, and they don't. This one's priced at $75. I've got a little over $100 for the one I sold that was the larger size. I believe this is by Rainbow Glass because it has this minaret stopper, and then the bottom is crackled. $65 these days for any sort of decanter from this era seems like a pretty good deal. I might be interested in that. There's not as many watchmakers these days, but watchmaking tools still sell because the people who know how to do this stuff, they know how to use these, and they want the old ones because they're well made and they still work. Watchmaking hasn't really changed in a century, although you have to do a lot of your own stuff now because a lot of the parts you used to be able to buy are not readily available. Yes, this style, the baskets with the funky flowers under the plastic, these are starting to be collectible too. There are not a lot left that are in really good condition, and so I think that's part of the why people are carrying purses for fun again rather than just for style. The Sessions Chef Clock, say that 3 times fast. Cute wall mount from about 1950. Sessions always was known more for novelty clocks. Their stuff wasn't as expensive. The movements were considered as good in the time, but actually a lot of them have survived the test of time. So this one's available at $75. The Fenton Hobnail double lamp is $350. This would be a 1950s era piece. I have always been a fan of trays. They were very popular. Cocktail trays and coffee tables were a thing of the 1920s and beyond. And this one is $55. The peacock and reverse painting, that's actually a very fair price for that. I'm used to seeing these in the Northwest, but skookum were popular everywhere. They started in the Northwest. Originally, they had apples for heads because it was done in Yakima, Washington, which is the center of the Washington state apple industry, and they wanted to promote Washington apples, so they made dolls out of the dried apple heads, and that is what developed into the skookums. Most of what we see are composition faces from the 30s and 40s. This is a Blanco piece from the 1960s. I believe this is a Joel Philip Myers design, if I remember right. And it's just so neat with the texturing and the column. This did not stay in the line very long, and because of that, it's a very hard piece to find. And she has it priced at $375, which reflects accurately the market for these now. It's just a wonderful piece you don't see often. And then I'm not familiar with this, but you're right, it is iconic 80s. I love that. John Bergen, so this was a Canadian artist? How interesting. I love the geometrics, and the colors couldn't be more 1980s, could they? It seems that, are you seeing that this era is starting to be more collected? I'm seeing some markets it seems like they're starting to catch on, and some they still haven't. Yeah.
I think jewelry more than...
The jewelry first. Jewelry and fashion come first, and then the people start to look at the other stuff from the era. So you're right. I think we're right in the jewelry and fashions picking up. But I think these are the sorts of things that we should be looking for. I get asked a lot by people watching my channel about, what should we be looking for from the 80s, because that's the next generation coming into the market. So I think this is a really interesting piece here.
Listed artist, Lentini.
Oh, very interesting. Oh, Giovanni Lentini. I haven't seen this work before, but he died in 1955, and I would have thought this would be a 1970s piece, so he was apparently ahead of his time. I like the linear way. It's almost like he started with a grid and worked his way out.
And a lot of them are similar.
That's really neat. Thank you for showing me that. That's a name I would not have known to look for.
This one.
Oh, yes.
Unusual piece.
Oh, that's Alvino Bogni. Yes, definitely a different look.
Yeah, it is. I only found one vase that was similar to those colored from him.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that isn't what I usually think of with Bogny, but that's what's interesting to me about it is that, you know, they worked long enough that, like anyone, you get bored and you want to experiment, right? And the markets change. This is beautiful too, and I don't know this. This is
No, it took me forever.
ceramic.
It took me forever. These are two rabbits. And their last name is Haas, which means, or
Yeah, like Hasser Pfeffer in on Bugs Bunny, right? Oh, how interesting.
isn't that beautiful?
It is a beautiful piece, and wow, really bold. I love that. Gebruder Haas. Well, thank you. You just taught us a bunch of stuff that we all will benefit from knowing, and so many folks really love this. That's gorgeous.
It's a Seminole Orange that is a lady designer that came over to Haeger in 1969.
Interesting. Alrun Ostenberg. I do not know her designs for Haeger.
And she developed that glaze
Yeah, with a little bit of speckling,
feel,
like an orange peel. Yes, and it's got that feel too, that little bit of texture. Wow, that is gorgeous. I'm so glad to know about this because this is, companies got guest artists starting around that time, and a lot of them, they didn't work much or they didn't do many lines, and so you wouldn't expect that. I would not look at that and think that's going to be Haeger. I would have thought German.
Yeah, definitely.
We have had so much fun this weekend here. If you're having fun watching this, please click thumbs up to like this video. Please check out our membership packages, and there is information in below the dotted line and any description of any video.
Now, this is interesting to see too, and your price is great on it, but we see these glazes a lot, and everybody assumes, oh, it's Francoma or Cole Pottery out of Carolinas, but this is actually Freeman McFarland out of California.
The guy that did the whimsical animals,
Birds,
gold leaf,
yeah.
the gold leaf on them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a wonderful piece, and what a great price, actually. This piece is really neat. This is Orifors. The color looks something like you would see from Holdgard, but Orifors did this too, and this is a nice Art Deco piece. You see a little bit of an etch signature there, but you would have to know what you were looking for if it was missing this label, because it doesn't have the etched Orifors on it. Very pretty piece, priced at $350. This landscape is very pretty. This is Stephen O'Donnell, an American artist who's, I don't believe, still producing. He's in his late 80s now. Really wonderful colors. It's like sunset on the mountains in the desert. This is priced at $595. This is my friend Richard. He's got a really great booth full of antiquarian books and paper ephemera. He does the antiquarian book show that'll be coming up in St. Petersburg soon at the Coliseum. This is a really fun poster. Nelson's Great World Comedy Company with trained dogs and birds. That must have been a lot of work. And the amazing somersault dog, Duke. And there is Duke doing a somersault right there. I bet that was a fun show. The life and work of Susan B. Anthony. Some references are very collectible depending on the subject. Freemasonry is another area that people are interested in. Some people because they're involved with the Masons, and some because the Masons are a secret society and they're curious what happens with them. A whole bunch of Alaskan related here. This is a neat piece too. This is for tobacco. It's Middle Eastern. He might look a little bit sinister, but he's really just enjoying his smoke, as you can tell. We are in Florida, so Disney related is going to be popular. Mickey's dog Pluto, all picture comics. And this is a hard one to find because it's this tall, narrow, and they didn't do a lot of these. Big Little books were much more prolific, so this one's priced at $125. This time it must be Bones. Pluto is very excited. Somebody did a little bit of coloring in this one. Thornton Burgess is another popular child's author and was quite prolific. Froggy Goes A-Courtin' is one of his more well-known titles. This one's priced at $30. The illustrations are like engravings. And the illustrator was Harrison Cady, who was quite well known as the illustrator of these and other children's books at the time. Beautiful jewelry and lots of it, a lot of fine jewelry. In the interests of dealer security, we don't really show a lot of those pieces up close, but they are certainly wonderful and lovely, and there is a great selection at this show. We are seeing renewed interest in biscuit barrels, and we are seeing renewed interest in Wedgwood. Yeah, hello there. How are you? These are very pretty, and these are older. You can tell by the mellowness of the polish that has been done over the years on them. There's our mark on the bottom, made in England. Made in England mark is usually right around the turn of the century with these pieces. And you notice a little bit of variation in the color of blue, and that is something that is interesting to collectors as well.
Yeah, is a insult. I did IT.
This was done by Wedgwood, these salmon and port bottles in the 1960s, and they are collectible in their own right. This one is the same era, but a little different shape here. Classical figures of lion's head, floral band. It's the neoclassicism that seems to be drawing people back to Wedgwood jasperware, and it seems like a new trend where we're really starting to see interest in these pieces again. This is a really neat thing here. This is a coaster. It's got spring action for a little bit of steering. It's the knee coaster. Here we go. And that's what you see there. So this is a commercially made piece, the knee coaster. You aim to the right or the left, and this spring action under here would help you steer the piece. So it was a coaster that you actually rode this way rather than standing on. I think that's really neat. They have it priced at $225. Asked lately to show more primitives, and fortunately I'm at a good show that has some dealers who have them. Really great old checkerboard, and a lot of people are just hanging things like this on walls. What a wonderful aged, mellow, patinaed look. That's going to date from around the 1890s. Selection of old cheese boxes here with this shaker style with the banding that fits over itself and then is nailed in. And the prices are good on these, from about $55 to $75. An old primitive salt box, and not only can you see all the handwork, that you can see that they repaired it at a certain point too. And that's what's so charming about primitives, is they really tell stories just by looking at them. This one also has some repairs. You know, it was hard to make this stuff. Someone had to sit and turn all of this, so if it cracked, well, you just put it back together again. Kind of like the front end of my car. And that is what people really are looking for now. And you can see they turned this from one piece of wood. You can even still see some of the grain. This is a neat adjustable height candle holder. You needed to be able to adjust depending on where you were sitting. And this is 19th century, priced at $395. I love the green paint. A boot jack. You know, all these things that people made just because they had to have them. Slaw cutters and things, mortars and pestles. They made them, they used them, and then a lot of people threw this away as soon as they could buy something commercially made. But it wasn't necessarily made better. And these old pieces are really fun and interesting to see now. Here's Buster Brown and his dog Tige in the Stillbank firm from about 1910 there. And this is really cool. A fainting couch for your doll. If you had one of those fancy French or German fashion dolls from about 1900, well, she would have needed this piece of furniture. I've only seen one or two this size in all the years I've been doing this. Fun farm animals too. A lot of these are 1920s and 30s vintage in the metal. These really great perfume bottles. These are Czech. The Art Deco with the women carved in the stopper. The three women is a really unusual style, and it's in color. That one's priced at $295, and then you have a similar one, but the women seated at the bottom too. Just fantastic. This one is really neat because it's cameo glass. So it's, and it is shown as Czech, but it is actually a two-layer, and look at that beautiful face that looks like an Alphonse Mucha. This is a really neat piece here too. This is Rosenthal, and it's silver overlay on porcelain. Rosenthal made beautiful porcelains before and after the Second World War. They were not friends of Hitler's, and their factory was expropriated, and it took them years to get it back, but they finally did, and they still are in production. They do some wonderful modernist studio lines today. This is on the Chippendale blank. It is just a really gorgeous piece with all the silver overlay, priced at $495. And then he's got the large Van Briggle shell in the mulberry, which is this purple to blue color. I sold the white one yesterday, but mine was smaller. That's a very pretty piece as well. Hustler Toy out of Sterling, Illinois made these. These are baseball and football games. They basically work similarly. They have the score needles for your downs or strikes and balls in the case of baseball. And you've got your little pieces here that represent your runners. Here you have your pieces that represent what's going on the field. And then you spin, and it shows you what happened. Very neat, from the 1930s. This is the kind they would have said ladies basketball team, sponsored by Conoco. And look at the hairstyles. This one's pretty early, probably around 1930. Very cute and doubly collectible because of the gas and oil. These uniforms would be worth a fortune if you could find them. Only $28. That's pretty neat. I'm not surprised you sold there because you've got some really interesting ones. I like the Pret celluloid.
Yes, that's a nice one, isn't it?
Yeah, they really are. The colors are good, and this one's neat with the multicolor.
And the inside, because they're hard. They always did stuff on the inside. This needs to be painted, but I mean, if you wanted them, you could have them for 20.
Wow, that's a great price. Well, I might be back for them actually.
In a collection. Otherwise, I sell them for 25 a piece, but you could have 10.
Oh my gosh, well, that's awfully good. I'll probably come back with some money then, but I just wanted to show everybody because we don't see a lot of pressed celluloid. We actually see Bakelite more.
Thank you, Vern.
Look at this. This thing is really cool. This one's priced at $165. It's painted on spelter, and look at the detail in him. He's just fantastic. And you can tell by the wooden plinth and the cracks in it from age that this piece is going to date to about 1890. Orville does a great job with restoration. I mean, some of these were rusted to the point where you couldn't even tell where they were, and he's restored them. That's a nice Buddy L there. Look at the fire truck. I just always thought that was the neatest thing. I would have wanted one of these as a kid. And very wisely, they restored the part that needed restoration, but they left the ladder alone, and the ladder is complete, and that's a big deal on these. This is interesting. Hypo gas filling station at your service, just phone 66. So this would have been from a rather small town. A little worn, but it's a neat gas and oil piece from the early days. And then over here, this fellow brought in some stuff that I want to take a look at. The mail pouch tobacco thermometer is one that we see a lot of interest in. Nickel Cola is something that you'll see around because Nickel Cola had a whole bunch of these printed up and then went out of business. So there were stacks of them, but they were all put together with wax paper between them. And over the years, the wax paper stuck them together. So a lot of them were destroyed. So when they sold off the excess about 15 years ago, about half of them weren't any good. Happy the violinist, he's got 2 of them under there, and the original box is great. The Cragston piece from Japan, and G.I. Joe was a popular motif. This is G.I. Joe and the 9 canine pups. You see that he's carrying them in a little cage on each side, and then he rolls along. And then this one is G.I. Joe and his jet-propelled supersonic speed Jeep from about 1950. Everyone assumes from a distance that this is Fisher-Price, but this actually was made by the Gong Bell Manufacturing Company, and Gong Bell did a lot of the really early Bell toys in the United States around 1900. By the 30s, they were trying to stay in business, and they were mixing wood and lithograph paper with the bells, and this is part of their line called Cutie Kids. You don't see a lot of these. And for you 50s kids or people who love Western, well, there's the Lone Ranger on silver, and he jumps up and down, and he's got his lasso, and he's priced at $175. So just a lot of really fun things from childhood. It's the Target Master, and I had one of these. This one is done by Ohio Art. They're made in 1965, right when the Canadian flag changed. It was the international model. The Canadian flag was simplified, and it's got the original box. And with the original box, they're asking $175. And our friend's going to show us something he sold. Oh, yes, I saw that yesterday. That is really neat.
That's great.
That is really great. Do you mind me asking what they gave for that?
110.
That is really cool.
Pulled down a lot.
Original crackling and everything there. That is neat. Drug sellers have beautiful things, and I should spend some time with them and learn more about them. But I really wanted to see this piece, and this young lady agrees with me. This is Navajo. And what an interesting piece because of the cubist geometric patterning to it. I wouldn't have expected to be Navajo at first, but they are right. It is tied at the corners. It is the right kind of wool. Just a really different piece, and they have that priced at $595. I love old scarves, and this one is really fun. New York City of Wonders. And it's showing the various wonders at this time, which I would say this time is the 1960s because JFK is the new name for Idlewild Airport. And they show the Empire State Building, but not the Twin Towers because I don't think those had been built yet when this was made. There's the UN, Rockefeller Center. Bigger cities, states, anything like that that is represented on linen, scarves, tablecloths, definitely is very collectible now. These folks are new to the show. This is Brian Deck Vintage Sports, and he seems to have a pretty good idea about baseball cards. He's got some really cool ones. Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in the major leagues. Satchel Paige, Joe DiMaggio, and he has some slabbed and graded so you know what you're getting. I have to say there's some really great stuff. The Dandy potato chips with Mickey Mantle, that's a hard one to get. Judy Allman, and she and Steve are the promoters of the show, and they have another show coming up in Sarasota. So if you miss this one, there's a chance you'll see some of these dealers there. Friends do a lot of jewelry, but they also have some vintage fashion, and I just love this flower power piece on the end here. That is right out of 1975, I would say, because it's 70. Oh, okay, with the big legs, and yeah, that is fantastic. Oh, really? So this was a nice piece when it was new. And not polyester. What a blessing. Molly Moisel's Originals. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's hard to believe we made things like this back then. There's the Raggy label. Wow, that is really beautiful. How much does a set like this cost? I haven't...
$295.
$295, yeah, that is just gorgeous. And this had to be an expensive piece when it was new. What is this?
This is what they call a Niton XRF.
It's quite an investment, but it's pretty invaluable for video. They got the example though, where you might find
It's a piece could be marked 14K, and you X-ray it with this thing, find out it's gold plated or it's
14K over sterling. So it's always safe.
I've run into that, yes.
Both pieces are marked, and this will tell us
exactly what carat weight and what the other materials in it are. That's so useful. You told me a very scary story about gold bars coming, was it from Asia, that are wrapped in heavy gold, and it turns out the middle is tungsten or some filler. And so, yes, you want to know what you're getting, and this basically is an X-ray machine in effect, right?
What it does is it basically shoots the beam. The electrons come back to this machine to try to chemical composition. So, follow a periodic table.
Wow, fantastic. So it can really distinguish just about anything.
It is. It's, if you're going to make an investment.
Oh, yes. I bought a pair of class rings made in Mexico that were signed Jostens, and I got them home. They said 14K, and they were absolutely gold-plated fake. And I was furious because I spent a couple $100 on those. So exactly, you're not scraping it or scratching it or possibly damaging it to find out. And also, again, with some of these heavily gold-plated items, they're so heavy that the exterior will still test. So, wow. Now, I imagine that this is something that you would need if you were dealing with precious metals a lot, because yet this is an expensive piece of equipment.
In our business, it's
absolutely, you're doing auctions, you're dealing with a lot of jewelry, and yes, you have to be able to stand behind, and so it seems like an investment worth making if you are in the position to do it.
The only trouble comes when you tell somebody that what they think they have
is not, and they don't have the machine, and they're like, but no, it's always said that, and it must be because it says, yeah, people think everything is infallible, but we unfortunately know better. Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg is the largest collection of his work anywhere in the world. And because of that, a lot of people in Florida have become enamored of Dali and have been collectors. This is a print, one of 199 in this series with the reflective woman. I have not seen this Dali piece before, but it's definitely his. And it does have the pencil signature in the right corner. And they have it priced at $480, which, considering the framing and how large a piece it is, seems like a pretty reasonable price. We see lots of little Mexican feather art pictures from the 1940s and 50s that were sold as souvenirs there. But this is its predecessor. This is feather art. And judging by the frame, I would say sometime around 1900. And these are real feathers. And then they painted out the beak and the eyes and all the other pieces. This is something that would have just been done by somebody with an artistic bent. We can't credit an artist. It's priced at $240 today. This time I see you've got a bunch of Kewpies.
Yeah, a few.
Some Kewpies and some Flosen Charlottes where they don't have any jointed, and then some pieces that do have joinery. Some original Snow Babies. We see a lot of the 1990s reproductions, but these are old Snow Babies from 100 years ago when they first were very collectible. This is a very cute child sewing machine. I used to see more of these down here in Florida. A lot of them seem to have gone in collections. This one is going to date to the early 1900s. It is German. There's the Made in Germany mark on it. A lot of them were. And this one's in great condition with great red paint. And this one's priced at $95. This would be fun for next Christmas. Look at this folk art Christmas house, all handmade. $115. That is very cute. This fellow gets the most wonderful toys and dolls. I've shown some of them before, but I haven't shown this set. This is a set that you bowl over with that ball. It's got Mother Mary Had a Little Lamb, Tauntaun the Piper's Son. It's from about 1900 when lithography really became more widespread. And it has the little sayings on the bottom. That is just a really, really cute set. Most of these were destroyed by people throwing the ball at it. And this one's priced at $1,400 because you just never see them anymore. You know who the maker was
Yes.
on those?
Bliss.
Bliss, okay. And was that English?
No,
American.
American.
Very
From the
interesting.
turn of the century, and they're called Skittles.
The Skittles, yes, that's right.
And they're a fairy tale.
Yes, I love the fairy tales. That's just wonderful. I saw Tom the Piper's Son and Mary and her lamb, and they're just wonderful. I have never seen a complete set before.
They're hard to find. It's the only one I've ever had, and I've had lots of Skittles.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Now, these are other Skittles down here that are stuck.
Oh, really?
Skittle.
I did not know that they made Skittles.
Those are rabbit Skittles.
Oh, those are great.
They're very early and very hard to find.
Oh, they're wonderful.
They've been worn, but they've been played with.
Yeah, but of course these are toys, and the fact that they exist at this point is, and they're really in pretty good condition considering for what they are exactly. And the fact that people were throwing things at them and knocking them down, and that was the game.
That was the game, yes.
We see dolls, but this one on the left is a milliner's model. And this is going to be mid-Victorian, I believe. Can you tell me a bit about they're milliner's models?
This is the milliner's models. They're papier-mâché in wood.
Yes.
And they're all hand-carved.
And was the idea to show what a small version of a large size gown that they were going to make was?
Yes.
So they're really almost like a salesman's sample rather than a doll in a sense.
In a sense.
That's so interesting.
And
this looks mid-Victorian from the fabric. Would that be about right?
Yes. These are candy containers over here.
I did not realize that. I've seen of course, we've seen bisque dolls before, and they're very nicely done with the teeth showing and the eyes, but I did not realize they made them as candy containers. Isn't that fantastic?
This one also comes apart.
That is.
And so does this one.
That's very interesting. Are those German?
They're German.
I know Germany made a lot of the later candy containers. I did not realize they were doing them that early.
They did very early, and this is an Easter egg.
That's wonderful, and it comes with all her dishes. Yes. That's fantastic.
So there's that.
And that should date to about 1900 as well, it looks like.
Probably more like 1920.
20s? Oh, okay. Very good.
This is the largest size of the St. Claus wagon. They have 3 sizes.
Dealer in good things.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Is this also German?
This is American.
American, okay.
I believe. You don't see too many paper lithos on this shade.
No, the condition is very good on that.
And then the inside are animals.
Oh, that's fantastic.
For that.
And that looks like 1910s, perhaps?
Probably 1920.
20, okay.
And this is a very rare early doll.
Oh, look at the face. Is that oilcloth?
It's oilcloth. Probably 1900s, handmade.
Oh, she's wonderful, yes. And oilcloth was something that you could draw on, and it was something people could make at home.
Yes.
Wow, so she is a folk doll. That is a wonderful piece.
And this is a miniature sled.
Aw, how sweet.
For dolls.
And you've got one that looks like he's ready to ride it in the Uncle Sam garb there.
That's really fun. That would have probably been given out near Independence Day, I imagine. How neat. You have some of the most interesting pieces. I mean, we see things like Shirley Temple, but then to see some of these folk pieces that are one of a kind, you just really do get great stuff. And this is Jan Murphy, who's been giving us this little tutorial, and she just has wonderful, and it is fun stuff, and just great antique vintage toys and dolls, and also a really neat lamp. This doesn't look like the rest of your stuff, but I love it.
That's what it is.
Ah, that's a fantastic lamp.
And pretty neat.
It is really neat. That looks like an American piece.
Yeah, probably, Art Deco, probably 30s.
Yeah, just beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This is really fun. You just have the neatest stuff. I always love showing what you bring.
Thank you. Yeah, my guess is you're going to have 8 or 9 carat there. That's what I'm thinking is it's probably under 10.
It's Victoria. Yeah, that's my guess. Let's see if we can get it in here.
How cool. We're going to find out.
Gonna find out. I may have to do it a different way, but let's see if it'll do it that way.
So does it actually cue on to Ephemera?
Yes, it does. I usually do it for about 10 seconds just to make sure it gets a good reading.
Right.
It's reading 10 carat.
10 carat, okay.
There you go.
That's wonderful. Now, but wasn't thinking 14, and now I know. What a fantastic machine. It's awesome. Thank you so much. That was really fun. And now you have to save up thousands of dollars on yellow Visa.
Or just catch us every time you see us. And
you know what? That sounds great. We'll just pay you to raise our goal.
There you go. Thanks, George.
Thank you.
I really like this little Hubley race car right here with the metal wheels, the little metal figure. It's really in good shape. It's got some wear to the original paint, but not enough that you would want to do anything to that. It's in great condition that does not need to be restored. It's not a reproduction. It has the right marks underneath. And, you know, race cars are particularly desirable, and that's a large piece for a Hubley from the 30s. And they have it priced at $80, which seems like a very fair price for what it is. The Singer Featherweight. This is the sewing machine to have if you have an old sewing machine. Number 221-1. This one, if you lift up, has the machine, which you see over here. This is really clean and in good shape, and as long as the brushes and bushings are all good, it will run forever and ever. They're a small size, a lot of quilters like, and they're just so well made. Singer, after all, really developed the sewing machine faster and in more permanent ways than any other company. And that is the machine to have. They have it priced at $440, which is about retail on those. What if I change my mind after I'm in orbit? This guy's great. $35. That would definitely sell in my show upcoming in West Palm Beach, where we get or at Mount Dora, the Rentier show, which is coming soon, because that is space related, and it's a Mercury capsule, so we know it's early 60s from Japan. They have a very big price on these because these are George and Nelson, and they are the pretzel chairs. And they are a very famous designer and a very famous design. Very simple, very elemental, very modernist, really cool. This is Gino and Sharon Longobardi's, and they have really neat stuff. They have a lot of good deco, high style pieces. I really like this brass piece. You know, everyone's into brass from the 70s. Well, here's a piece of brass that goes back a little bit earlier than that. I like the scimitar, priced at $300. Candlestick phone. I just sold mine today here, actually. They said they've had a pretty good show, though, and I'm not surprised because they have a lot of true deco, and this is coming back into style. Look at those great candlestick holders in chrome. Chrome was the big replacements for silver in the 1930s because it was cheaper and it was shiny, and people needed things to be inexpensive. Well, then by the 70s, all the deco was starting to be rediscovered, and these are $70 now. When deco was really at its fever pitch in the 1980s as far as collecting and inspiring all sorts of new designs based on deco, prices were even higher. This gal is great, $85. Farberware is the maker of the chrome piece, and then you have the 6 glasses, which do glow under a blacklight, so that would be a fun set for the blacklight collectors. Little pen stand here, $115. Very pretty Art Deco lamp. I just am very partial to this sort of thing. The exotic dancers from the 1920, Loy Fuller. Wonderful design. $200 on those. Art Nouveau sculpture, Art Deco lighting. This looks like Herdago with the pixie head and celluloid. Streamlined design, and you can see why that was so popular because it suggested motion even while the piece is static. That's a really neat piece in my opinion. I've always been a deco fan, however, but I am also a lover of Art Nouveau, very flowing, naturalistic lines. And in France, that merged into Art Deco and then inspired us, and then our companies like Frank Art in New York made pieces like this that are very strong deco design. These marble Art Deco mantel clocks are going to be French. Very, very pretty. I have a few of those to sell myself. Always been a fan of compacts, of course, and they have some pretty ones here. I like the 1940s deco design of this piece. And this is nice design and detail on decorated leather from about 1960. But then there's these lighters where they were personalized. These cost as much as $10 in the 1930s when they came out. Ronson master case, and this is where your cigarettes would go. These are very popular now. I had a nice collection a few years ago. They have all sold. You have some really interesting stuff, and I was wondering if you would show us this piece, because I came earlier when you were gone and I didn't really know how to describe it. I've never seen one before.
Well, this is the first index typewriter, 1881.
And what does index typing mean?
Versus a keyboard typewriter, you don't have keys, you have an index. She's a stylish, like your letter, and then you go another one, and the inking is in the pads.
Oh, that's interesting. So then you basically are typing out a small card and it can do a certain standard size.
Very expensive. A contemporary keyboard typewriter of 1881 would cost like this one.
And this was $10.
You'd like the speed and efficiency of a keyboard, but you could afford...
For a tenth of the price, you could sit there and hunt and peck, which is what a lot of people do now anyway.
These were among the most popular typewriters of the 19th century. They were advertised as the typewriters for home use and for personal use. Exact same language we used to introduce the first PCs in the 1980s.
What a neat piece. Well, thank you. I have never seen one. I'm sure they were common in the time, but I imagine most of them went away when people could afford typewriters.
Yeah, by the turn of the century, the index typewriter was pretty much obsolete. There were so many inexpensive keyboard models they showed up.
And that was the end of that. And then this is a very early portable Blinkensderfer. Oh, that was a Connecticut maker. I didn't realize.
Yeah, the George Blickensderfer story is one of the best in the typewriter industry. He made the first machines in his garage, introduced them at the Columbia exhibition, the Chicago World's Fair in 1890. Like an entrepreneur, young entrepreneur, he couldn't afford a lot, so he bought the smallest space he could buy at the fair.
I love World's Fair stuff. I remember seeing the building, but...
Yeah, they invited entrepreneurs, inventors, and innovators from around the world to show their latest technologies. But as it turned out, they were dominated by typewriters. They put them next to Remington, the world's leader. Their Model 6 weighed 40 pounds. It cost $135 new.
Giant heavy thing, yes.
This machine weighed 5.5 pounds. It costs $35 new.
I think these are the neatest looking contraptions, but I am mystified by their purpose.
Start with this guy, with your sequencer. This is 1850. 1850, coal oil was invented. Coal oil soon thereafter became kerosene. Well, coal oil was important because it was the first clean burning fuel. Lady House could sit in her privacy of her bedroom at her dresser without having to be in the kitchen or the living room
and do her hair.
Because you had a Benjamin Franklin cast iron stove in the living room, you had maybe a wood burning cast iron stove in the kitchen. And that was the only way you could heat the current line would be on the cast iron. You couldn't put it in the...
Right.
You couldn't put it in the fireplace. You couldn't put it in the...
Right, because it would soot and you couldn't burn your hair with it, yeah.
You'd get soot in the hair. So this one burned alcohol. For now, she could be in her bedroom, do her hair, and have a martini. Then 10 years after that, 1870, Rockefeller plumbed homes for natural gas for lighting, not for cooking or heating there. But if you had a plumbed house, you certainly could afford to have this plumbed right into the lady's dresser in her bedroom.
Her curling. So it is another curling iron heater for gas. That is so interesting. Obviously, you have studied quite a bit in terms of the way Victorian life was led, but what an amazing and interesting display you have. And I can honestly say I've never seen those before, so.
I have 100 things in my booth you've never seen.
You have a lot of interesting things.
Kate, a dealer or collector, I have 100 things I can show you in a few.
It's really, really interesting and impressive, and I will have to come back and let you show me more. This was originally purchased for the Queen's Silver Jubilee, and it is Gerard. They are the Crown Jewelers of London. It's a beautiful piece with the royal seal and the commemoration dates. It is solid silver. It was originally owned by an English merchant and made its way to America. Very, very, very scarce royalty commemorative. Well, Venice proved to be a beautiful and exciting show as always, and I'm so glad that you got to enjoy it with us. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.